Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have John Epperson.
Hello, everybody.
We also have Luke Stutters.
Hello.
Now, John, I don't know if you're making personal announcements, but you recently had an addition to your family, right?
I did. Melanie Catherine is her name. She just arrived about a week ago, and she's healthy. Mom's healthy. We're all tired here, but we're good.
Oh, good deal. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations on spawning your child process.
Yes. My spawn is very healthy right now.
Good deal. Good to hear. All right. Well, this week we're going to be talking about Ruby 3. When I went freelance, I was still only a few years into my development career. My first contract, I was paid $60 an hour. Due to feedback from my friends, I raised it to $120 an hour on the next contract. And due to the podcasts I was involved in and the screencasts I had made in the past, I started getting calls from people I'd never even heard of who wanted me to do development work for them because I had done that kind of work or talked about or demonstrated that kind of work in the videos and podcasts that I was making. Within a year, I was able to more than double my freelancing rates, and I had more work than I could handle. If you're thinking about freelancing or have a profitable but not busy or fulfilling freelance practice, let me show you how to do it in my Dev Heroes Accelerator. Dev Heroes aren't just people who devs admire, they're also people who deliver for clients who know, like, and trust them. Let me help you double your income and fill your slowdowns. You can learn more at devheroesaccelerator.com. This has kind of been a long time coming. We keep talking about it, and yeah, we finally pulled things together and decided to get to it. So yeah, just so that people are aware, it was released on Christmas of 2020, and Matt's has been talking about Ruby 3 by 3 for a while. It was 3 times faster by Ruby 3, and I can't remember. I think there was some other element to that, but that was kind of the crux of things, right?
Yep. We talked about it at a lot of Rails comps. I should say mostly Aaron Patterson has talked about it at a lot of Rails conferences.
Yep.
Which is funny because, you know, for Ruby, like some Ruby applications, some of the benchmarks I've seen is 3 times faster, but for Rails, it's not.
This is the big deal, that the Ruby core team have done astounding things, but the benefit of those is not yet reaped by the vast majority of Ruby users.
Right. I think I went and looked at the Ruby benchmark that Noah Gibbs does. And yeah, it's basically on par with Ruby 2.7. And so, yeah. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting just to put that out there to begin with. So if you're looking to upgrade from Ruby 2.6 or Ruby 2.7 to Ruby 3 to get a major bump in your performance on a Rails app, don't hold your breath.
That's the executive summary, yeah. I mean, it's not all bad news. There's the promise of much, much higher performance as soon as the new features, which we're going to go into, are realized in the Rails ecosystem. And also it gives a kind of roadmap for improved Rails performance in the future.
At the same time, I think it is worth noting that it isn't massively slower. In fact, it's basically roughly at the same speed, so you're not losing anything by doing it, at least speed-wise in raw Ruby.
No, the big Rails speed bump came from kind of 2.0 to 2.5 was the kind of the real ramp for Rails performance.
That sounds right to me. I remember moving from like 2.3 to 2.6 and kind of seeing that's where I kind of saw performance gains. So yeah,
there was like a slowdown at 3 or something, but I think that got fixed. Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was a slowdown in there that came after the ramp. Okay, maybe no one remembers it the same way that I do. That's okay.
It was a long time ago.
Fair enough. I've also worked mostly on legacy projects. So, you know, we kicked the can down the road on upgrades a lot. We certainly were never a bleeding edge. So we always we had the privilege of being like, well, I don't feel like upgrading right now. Let's wait and see what happens to everybody else.
Right. And then you come around to it when it's stabilized.
Yep. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I've never done a .0 upgrade. I've only ever done a .1 that I can remember.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to do .0 to get there, but yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. So I think we kind of got that out of the way because I didn't want people to come in and go, oh, there's all this cool stuff, and then just be like, So what are we looking at for Ruby 3? I mean, I went and read some articles. I think some of you guys did too. So I'm curious what stood out to you.
Getting more JavaScripty. That's the big takeaway from me, having done a bit more ES6 in the last month or so. There's a very, very clear parallels between ES6 features and features that have been introduced since Ruby 2.7.
Now, is that a function of just modern programming, or is that a function of common influence, which is kind of the same thing, or is that a function of I don't know?
Yeah, I think it's Rails developers who are using these features in JavaScript and have then essentially said, why can't we have this?
I mean, we were due for that, right? Like, it's not like every Rails, or it's not like Ruby is like the place where every good programmer comes from or anything. There's plenty of good features in other languages to grab. Do you want to call out anything specific that you were thinking about? Oh, what was that, Chuck?
It's just JavaScript hate that exists in all of this bubbling to the surface.
Stone him! Stone the blasphemer!
I tell you what, I do love listening to DHH talk about JavaScript. I never get tired of listening to that man talk about JavaScript.
In my defense,
I'm going to be working him to see if we can get him on to talk about Hotwire. But yeah,
that'd be cool. In my defense, I would say that I didn't say that there were good programmers in JavaScript specifically.
The general,
I'll weasel a little bit.
The general thrust of this I've taken is that I think most people are moving from 2.6. So my grand plan here is to look at what's changed since 2.6, which is generally what's in production. And the high level overview of that is that 2.7 introduces the bulk of syntax and language changes. And then 3.0 adds a few things and makes what used to throw a warning in 2.7 now an error. So my grand plan is to go through the new features in 2.7 and then look at how Ruby 3 has formalized those.
Now, if we're taking that approach, I'm just going to point out this may take us 2 episodes. So if you're listening to this and it says part 1 on here, that's why. Because there's a lot there. I'm sorry. That just is.
There are a lot of things. I remember, so I'm a huge Ruby Weekly person.
Oh yeah.
It's
Go
super
Peter.
Great. Yeah. And I remember I want to say 6 months, maybe even a year ago, there was some article that came out that was saying, hey, 2.7 is doing keyword arguments this way, and 3.0 isn't out yet, but it's going to do them this other way, and that's going to be a really big problem. And I read that article and I immediately said, okay, so I'm never going to install 2.7 because I just don't want to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
And that has sort of been my stance the whole time. So I've been like, so yeah, I definitely have been waiting for 3 to come out with the intention of moving everything straight to 3. I already started doing it with one thing, but I don't have anything that uses keyword arguments, so I'm not, or at least that I have upgraded yet. So I haven't
done exactly the opposite view, in that I've got everything running 2.7.
So do I actually. I moved everything to 2.7, but you don't have to use keyword arguments, and so I kind of use them where I want them.
I do have apps,
which is horrible.
But yeah.
I'm not consistent. So much. So yeah,
good.
No, I'm just saying I'm not consistent. I don't use them all the time. So
yeah, there are a lot of very good articles out there that like talk you through all 3 of them, and we can probably link one as well. That would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
That just talks you through the differences, because the problem is kind of nuanced. Like on the surface, it looks like you use them all the same way, but there are certain like edge case behaviors that you just need to know that you may be relying on. Yeah.
The reason for my 2.7 across the board is because I moved all my systems up to Ubuntu 20.04 as a base image. And because I had to hand a few things off, I redid the whole thing to use System Ruby, which, as everyone knows, is the absolute best choice. And System Ruby on Ubuntu is 2.7. So that's where that came from.
I totally forgot about that. I remember seeing that, and I remember turning to my buddy and saying, this is going to like really hurt a lot of people accidentally who use System Ruby. Maybe no one uses, I mean, I think we did the survey not too long ago, They talked about what people were using, and I think that most people are using RVM, or CH Ruby in production. So, but for the people that are using System Ruby, maybe the people that use System Ruby are more aware of this. I have never used it for production.
For me, it's just a pragmatic choice because I don't have to explain RVM. I don't have to get into that level of information. I can just say, here are the 5 steps you need to set the system up from scratch. Now the project is handed over to you. And if you want to set up a different Ruby, you go right ahead.
That's funny because I use the Brightbox packages to make sure I just have the version I want.
Well, that's a very solid tip.
We'll have to discuss this on our system
setup
explanation. Yeah, because my 5-step process includes Docker. So, but yeah, it's different.
Yeah, that's true. I am starting to look at deploying with Docker. I actually use Docker in development, but I haven't moved any of my apps in production over to Docker. And so that's something that I'm looking at now. And that's probably makes it a whole lot less of an issue because you just, you use a preset up image with the right version on it.
Yep. Oh, sweet. All right. Were there any?
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, should we dive into 2.7 or no? Where were you going to go?
I was just going to ask if there were any features that anybody has been particularly waiting on to happen.
Well, some of the concurrency stuff, but I think a lot of that came in 2.3 or in 3.0. Sorry.
Yep.
And I'm still not sure exactly how solid they are because some of it's still experimental. So
I will say that for my part, as someone who is still working on legacy systems, I still get my advantage of letting everybody else, test out Falcon Server and things like this, which I'm very excited about. Just very not excited that I can't use it yet. So we'll see how that goes.
Why can't you use it?
Because I don't have whatever the threading thing that it has. You don't have it unless you're in 3.0. So
right, gotcha.
And I have one app that is, in a long path to getting to 3.0, but we're not there yet.
I can just see John. Did you cut yourself on that? Okay, we don't need it yet.
All right. So many people talk about the whole pioneer townsfolk settler kind of idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally a townsfolk person. I'm usually not the last person there, but I usually like other people to be the pioneers of stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, let's dive into 2.7 stuff.
2.7 features pattern matching. This is the first one. It is not pattern matching. Let me just make this clear. They've called it pattern matching, but for me, this is clearly not pattern matching, right? This is not a regular expression.
So a lot of the pattern matching discussion that I saw going on was happening around the same time that I was doing the Elixir Mix podcast, right?
Yep.
And so what they're looking at, and I haven't seen this link that you dropped in here, and we'll put it in the Delio as well here. But yeah, it's what you have in the slides here that you're putting in looks a lot like pattern matching from Elixir, and so that's kind of what we're looking at here, and it's a pretty handy feature, and it's used very heavily in Elixir. And Elixir was heavily influenced by Ruby, and it's interesting to see it kind of influencing back.
So this is not pattern matching the string. This is matching structures.
Yes.
This is looking inside your array of objects and saying, I want the object with these properties. This is looking inside your array of strings and saying, I want the one that's a number.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's going to be most useful for our spec tests, actually. So I don't know if you guys have ever done the whole I want a hash that includes another hash that has this item in it. I don't care what the other item, and you do a hash including, and you nest a bunch of times or whatever, and you have messy stuff like that. I feel like there's potential for this to show up there and maybe make that kind of stuff a little bit easier. And the base case here is in case statements or whatever. I don't use case statements a lot, so I don't feel like I'm personally going to get tons of use out of that, right? But yeah, I that has been my thing. Is I kind of am hoping that our spec tests get a tad easier in that way.
Well, the thing that immediately came to mind, because I've been working on Mongo for the last month or so, is dealing with things like MongoDB databases that don't have a fixed schema. So each record or document can have a wildly different structure. And often when you're working on a dev project, you'll have a kind of persistent Mongo database between software versions. So you will have a very diverse group of documents where maybe a keyword was introduced recently, but it isn't in all the older records. And the pattern matching can very easily pick them out. So instead of saying, if this has this property, you use it as a filter saying, give me all the documents that have this property. And you just do that on one line instead of having the if in the end.
I used a lot of fetch and dig before, which I feel like is equivalent to that, but it might be nicer to use this. Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I've used fetch a ton to get that. This, having written some Elixir, it is very convenient for, I just care about these three areas of this overall structure. And so, I just want to extract data from it, or I want, for the case, right? In this case, I want this particular. Anyway, it was really, really convenient way of thinking about how things go together and what parts of it I really care about, and allowing me to ignore the rest of the extraneous stuff. The other thing that I can see here with the pattern matching that's really convenient is like pulling variables and stuff out of request variables and response variables in Rails and Rack and stuff like that, right? Where I can just pull a param, or I can pull a header or things like that out just by knowing generally how it's put together.
It's got this. No,
what was that?
No, this is slightly different to numbered params.
Are you? Yeah, maybe I missed. I was trying to understand or clarify, Chuck. Were you referring to a different feature, or you were saying you were thinking pattern matching might help you rip that stuff out?
Yeah, pattern matching, in my opinion, could help you pull some of that out as well, because you can actually look at, like, if you know the name of a header or something like that, or if you know that it's structured in a certain way, then you can pull the header structure out, and then you can actually inspect it for certain types of structures or certain, things in there.
God, I thought you were talking about the implicit assignments you can do. So there's some.
Yes, you can do that as well. And that's also handy, right? Because you could make implicit assignments out of your parameters or out of your headers. But yeah.
So that's what I've been seeing a lot of in the ES6 work is you can do this. It bends your mind when you come into it the first time. But they call it destructuring. But for me, it's an implicit assignment. So instead of actually assigning the variable name, it does it for you by just typing the variable name with a colon after it and nothing after it.
Yep.
So this differs slightly from the ES6 where you don't put a colon after it.
Yeah, it is a form of destructuring, but it's not. Typically, when you're talking about destructuring, you're talking about an array or a hash. And in this case, it's any structure that you have, as long as you know what it looks like internally.
I'm kind of interested to see how that pans out. Like, maybe it's a feature that we can use, right? But for example, we don't. It's a stylistic commonality in Ruby, right? To not assign two things on one line if you can help it, right? And even though we can totally do it, and it makes some things easier, and there are certain cases when it totally makes sense, right? But I wonder if this will get more decided as a stylistic thing. That would be interesting, because I looked at it and I was like, I don't know that I see a lot of benefit for me, kind of thing. But a lot of things are discovered, right? Like, comes out, somebody's like, hey, check this out, made my life easier, and then I'm like, oh, I was wrong.
Yeah, it's always been less of an issue in Ruby because you can always return more than one thing from a Ruby method, but in JavaScript you can only return one thing. So destruction was kind of a big deal and saved you a lot of code, whereas this doesn't save you a massive amount of code, as you say.
Yeah, we have other tools for the job, and that's also part of kind of what I was thinking is it's hard to swap you out of your old feature if your old feature is good enough.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this one goes. Definitely.
The next one is really the big one, which is the positional and keyword arguments for methods. And this, I think, is what's going to catch people moving to Ruby 3.
Catch in a good way or catch in a bad way?
catch in an enraging way.
I don't know if you answered my question or not.
The Ruby rage will be experienced. I've already experienced it myself. I mentioned on the previous show where I just what's going on, and I realized it was because of this change. I was getting all these warnings.
Yeah, I think switching, if you explicitly want a hash, which I totally have done the thing, right, where because keyword arguments basically had the same exact syntax as a hash, I could get away with it. But yeah, so I have some apps that are going to be problematic because I used it extensively. But for most of my apps, not so much.
It's the double splat or double asterisk that bothers me, because whenever I see a double asterisk, it kind of gives me flashbacks to C++, and I kind of recoil instinctively from a double splat. It's like, oh no, don't want it.
I have two apps.
No plus plus.
Yeah, I have two apps where I use
plus.
the double splat a lot, and I am now excited about those.
Yeah, I've definitely seen this warning, right, where it's, you're using a hash and you should be using keyword arguments. And I think mostly I've seen it from like Rubocop, because Rubocop is trying to prep me for it as well on my current work project. And so it's saying, no, we're expecting that. Yeah. But I mean, I kind of, and I go back and forth on like the keyword arguments too, just from the sense that in some ways I like kind of the explicit feel of keyword arguments. But if I have one or two arguments, or if I'm just taking one argument, the keyword feels like overkill. And so I go back and forth too on whether I want one or whether I want the other, or whether I want both, and how to separate them and all that stuff. And then the warnings just bother me. So I don't know.
The thing that I think, go ahead. You can roll first.
I like them for, where to use them? I think it was in the Ox XML library. And when you're creating your parse object, when you first start using it, then you've got these various options like, I don't know, enable CNAME equals true. And that, I really, really like that syntax for just when you're first setting up a parser.
For me, keyword are, okay, so I've used the hash syntax for like a long time, right? The implicit Rails hash syntax, right? And that enabled me to have these flexible method definitions, basically, or to have a method definition where it accepted basically different things under different circumstances, which isn't always good, right? But for me, when there was a case when we wanted it, right? That's explicitly when we would choose to use that. For the most part, I mean, if you remember the nice Sandy Metz rules, right? Like, you're not supposed to pass more than 4 parameters or whatever, including your hash keys, right? So, but and the whole point of that rule, right, is, when you have a whole bunch of parameters, you kind of lose you probably have something to extract. It's just a smell test for you.
Yep, good old clean code.
Yeah. So, but there are cases, right, when I explicitly want to pass objects that are different, or I explicitly want to pass parameters for different cases, maybe for something that's like managing other objects, or, very unique cases or whatever. And I totally have abused this under those cases. And those are the cases that are going to be a little, anyway, those are going to be fun to deal with.
Yeah, I've got production code where I often want to call a function and say, process this order, but do not trigger this particular part of the method call. For example, a bit that writes to the database, or marks, sends a confirmation to the server. And yeah, you can put like a true or false as a parameter, but having a name parameter like don't tell the server equals, and then colon true is a much, much more readable way of doing it.
Yeah, there's definitely good and bad stuff, but I mean, in a lot of ways, I think if you have tons of this around your code, most of the time it's because you're kind of abusing it. There are definitely, I feel like there's okay, so for every anti-pattern, right? The reason why it's an anti-pattern is because there is some use case which it makes sense for, and you might have one of those, and you'll have to throw up your hands here. But
yeah, I like the readability. can definitely be used. So the fix for the warnings that you get when you move to 2.7 is there's a Ruby 2 underscore keywords method, I presume, that you can put ahead of your method definition. So if you've got the old style, instead of writing def my method, you can write Ruby 2 underscore keyword space def space my method, and that will kind of fix it for you without adding extra lines of code. But
that's not a code smell,
right? But if you do want to write compatible code across like Ruby 2 to Ruby 3, you have to do something slightly more exotic where you use that with a symbol that's the name of the method. And we'll get into that, the more Ruby 3 stuff. The other thing is you can now use non-symbols, as in things that are not symbols, as keyword arguments when you're passing them to your methods. So you don't have to use a symbol in the hash that contains the keyword arguments in Ruby 2.7. Now, this, I know, I see you furrowing your brow in consternation, but this is a pattern I've seen in ES6, where in JavaScript you can have non-string keys, yes, for objects. And you can leverage this in ways that I'm still learning about. But I think this is why this was introduced, to meet this need.
Have you ever wondered if you could be offering a faster, less buggy experience for your customers? I mean, let's face it, the only way you're going to know that is by actually running it on production. So go figure it out, right? You run it on production, but you need something plugged in so that you can find out where those issues are, where it's slowing down, where it's having bugs. You need something like that there. And Raygun is awesome at this. They just added the performance monitoring, which is really slick, and it works like a breeze. I love it. I love it. It's like you get the ray gun and you zap the bugs. Anyway, definitely go check it out. It's going to save you a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of sanity. I mean, let's face it. Grepping through logs is no fun, and having people not able to tell you that it's too slow because they got sidetracked into Twitter is also not fun. So go check out Raygun. They are definitely going to help you out. There are thousands of customer-centric, customer-focused software companies who use Raygun every day to deliver great experiences for their customers. And if you go to Raygun and you use our link, you can get a 14-day free trial. So you can go check that out at rubyrogues.com/Raygun.
So you could already do that in hashes, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you may have encountered this when you were splatting a hash, right? That it was like, hey, it blew up because such and such thing wasn't a symbol, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the exact message or whatever. And you're like, oh, I just need to symbolize my hash because your hash probably had a string in it in most cases.
Right.
If it had an object in it, well, that's going to be a little harder. And I feel like, okay, how does this interact? Did you look up how this interacted if I just like turn on Ruby 2 keywords?
No. No, I don't know.
So if I turn on, so what I'm thinking here, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. So I'm thinking if I turn on Ruby 2 keywords, then it makes all my ills go away, because now it doesn't matter if I splat a hash that has a string in it, because it will get past. I don't know if that's a good thing to do.
I'm 99% sure that's what it does.
I want to use keys that are numbers. So just like JavaScript arrays, right? So 0, 1, 2, right? And then see what that does to my hashes.
I don't think an object is a valid variable name, though. So it would be very difficult to access.
Yeah, but 0 and 1 and 2, they're just they're numeric literals.
Oh, geez. Also invalid.
How can I hurt Ruby?
Maybe there's limitations to this.
Maybe.
I didn't notice that one.
So there's more changes with the double splat on the empty hash. Now this is not something I do, but this is again another breaking change in 2.7 if you use this. And this was changed due to numerous bug reports filed on the Ruby Lang project, which is the sure sign if you want to get something changed in Ruby, just keep finding bug reports under different names. And you can make the language do whatever you want. So this was it's tricky to explain, but this is the idea that if you pass a double splat with an empty hash, then the method will actually receive an empty hash instead of nothing at all. And before,
okay, say that again. Hang on, I'm trying to visualize this.
You got asterisk curly braces. That's what we say in English. Double splat, empty hash. This used to send an empty hash in. So if you've got, for example, a method with a default, say x equals 1, and then the rest of the keyword arguments being received in the hash, that default value of 1 will not be triggered if you pass in a double splat empty hash before 2.7. Instead, that X will get an empty hash. And this is what was confusing everyone and leaving people with filed bug reports, because they would expect if you pass in an empty hash, then the defaults will kick in for the method. But they don't. They get overwritten by the empty hash. So in 2.7, they removed it. And instead now, from 2.7 on, your default value will be triggered.
So it's a bug fix. It's not necessarily an unexpected or new.
I wouldn't risk the wrath of Ruby gods by describing it as a bug fix, but it was sufficiently non-intuitive that they changed it.
Okay,
I do remember running into that, and I do remember banging my head against the keyboard till I figured it out.
So at the same time that they've reduced something unintuitive, they also introduced numbered parameters, which is almost foreshadowing, in my opinion, in Hollywood terms, as to introducing features that will greatly confuse people.
So what are numbered parameters?
So this is when you call your enumerable, you've got your array of things and you're calling dot each, and you need your pipe, don't you? You need your pipe characters in your block to tell your program what the variable name is of that item in the array as you loop over them. So if you've got something like, I don't know, addresses dot each, then you've got your pipe address, and then the address becomes that. Numbered parameters gets rid of both the pipes and the word address, and instead you can just start using these numbered parameters without typing in the pipe symbol, which saves you, often a shift as well as a keystroke.
Why?
It's better than that. It's better than that because they were originally going to use the syntax of these numbered parameters using the @ symbol.
Okay.
So they looked like class variables. But there was a popular revolt on the Ruby lang list, and they changed it to an underscore. So now, instead of going addresses.each, open curly braces, pipe address, pipe, put address, you can now just type addresses.each, put _1. And because the _1 means the first parameter, you can use _1 instead of address.
I know I'm going to use this, but it's a lot less readable.
Yeah, I mean, I get that point because the vast majority of my code looks like, I don't know, addresses.each, pipe A. You just take the first letter, don't you, of the variable, because you can't be bothered to singularize it.
I type it all out myself when I use the pipes.
Well, that's the difference between an amateur and a professional right there. But I don't.
No, that's the difference between me knowing that I'm going to come back later and go, what the hell is A?
I come up with it when you've got a few nested. I come up with increasingly cryptic systems. So sometimes I use the first 2 letters of a variable, to disambiguate.
Should we discuss the fact that you're nesting?
Oh yeah. What's life without a nested loop?
I have totally nested before, and when I get to the point where I'm like writing cryptic variables, I'm like, John, maybe you should refactor this, and yeah, sometimes maybe. It works. I actually see this one happening. I think that it is less readable, but I do think that the fact that it saves people the pipe character actually ends up winning out in the long run. And I think that we'll just get used to the style difference, and then we'll just be like, oh, this is just how it works. So that's my prediction. that I'm hoping. Well, I don't know that I'm hoping that it will be right, but that's what I think will be.
Yeah, but it kind of makes it look a bit more like Perl to me. I can't tell you why. It's just a kind of leading underscore.
There's an endorsement.
And a third of all Ruby programmers immediately go out and change their code to this.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's that many, but there seem to be quite a few.
Yeah, it's definitely, as I said, you can use it to enrage your colleagues and extend code reviews indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I really like is the beginless range. I'm actually very pleased about this because there were so many times when I thought that I should just be able to do this rather than having to do 0 or -1 that I'm just like, sweet, that's cool. And I don't think it makes it hard to read. Go ahead.
I agree. I think 0 is a reasonable assumption for like an array of numbers. And I think like A is the same thing for an array of, single character strings. I don't know how far I would carry it beyond that, though.
I also completely missed that this was a feature coming until you made this list.
Yeah, I don't see
Luke made us a list. We went and did our homework, and then we were working off of Luke's list.
This I don't get. I don't understand the value of the beginner's range. This to me, this adds no value, but
it's minimal.
But
you're eliminating a 0, right? That in my head, that's really it.
Yeah, it's a reasonable assumption in my brain that you would start at 0 on a range of something to 3.
I also would like to clarify that I'm not using -1 as my starting point. There have been occasions when I've said, I want to very clearly be able to start at a point and get somewhere. And I know that I can start it, I guess maybe what I should say is what I really want is ranges that I don't have to put -1 at the end, right? That's actually what I'm thinking in my head.
Yeah, I'll say it again. This looks like ES6 to me. This is the kind of thing which they've been introducing in JavaScript, this kind of sugar.
Wait, this is in JavaScript? I don't remember this. JavaScript doesn't have ranges.
Syntax with lots of leading dots. So you've got your triple
the
dot.
Tri dot?
Yeah,
they do. The triple dot does everything in JavaScript now.
It's not a lie. It's a very accurate summary.
It is. It's true.
It's basically just the splat operator for us.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, no, I like it. I would also like it if I could do the endless range, I guess, right? Maybe I can.
I don't know.
And I just don't know it.
I have a feeling that was already in there.
Yeah, I think that would be counterintuitive given a beginless range that actually infers a beginning.
Yeah, I guess the real question is if you just type array ... do you get everything?
I feel like what you just said is not what I thought that you were gonna say. So array ... will throw an error. Do you mean like 0 ... or for a range?
No. I mean array square bracket ... a close square bracket. Does that give me everything?
Yeah,
but is that inclusive? Is that inclusive of negative infinity and positive infinity?
Right.
I mean, luckily you don't have to do that. You can just say array. but maybe there's a use case for that I can't think of off the top of my head. Oh, you can totally do it. Nope, you can't. Just found it. There is an endless range, but you can't use it as an array. Okay.
No, because it's going to try and instantiate the values, I think.
Yeah, it looks like
and you'll overrun your heap.
You can. It is a valid range. It's just not a valid iterable.
Yeah.
So you can use it to slice your array, though. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I didn't know that we had this. Very cool. I learned something today that I was not expecting to learn today.
We only have this in 2.7, not 2.6.
Yeah. Let me look up which version of Ruby I found that in. That was 2.6 that I just found this in.
Oh, nice.
So endless range exists already in 2.6.
The feature I am excited about is the .tally function for enumerables. This is something I do so often. 90% of the work I do involves counting how many of things I have, for manufacturing. So this is going to massively reduce all of my code bases. So
Luke doesn't have to take off his toes to do his programming anymore.
Luke is
take off his shoes.
Tally
I said take off his toes.
Tally's just eliminated Luke.
Yeah.
What I usually do is do hash key assignment to count things.
Yep.
So the idea that you can just replace all my hash key assignments with a .tally after it, and then that gives you a hash with the key being the object itself and the value and how many times it appears that's most of my code gone.
Yeah. I mean, you would either do a dot filter or a dot count and then a dot filter. I mean,
have a feeling Active Record has this sort of thing already.
Well, Active Record's pulling it out of the database. The database does it.
Yeah. So the other thing is that when you pull back an array of records from the database, right? It's not A, B, C, D. It is unique record that has a property of A.
Right.
So then you end up doing like group by or something, right?
Yep.
And then
you call dot count in your database.
Yeah, you can count your array in each of the keys of your group by.
Yep.
That's typically how I've done tallying for Rails type things.
Yeah.
I haven't had to.
But yeah, your database engine does it. Ruby doesn't do it for you.
Oh, I meant if I did the group by thing, then I would do it. Oh, but yeah, you could just do it straight in the query too. Yep.
Yeah. And you can do your tallies in the database as well and get counts based on your stuff too. So
I was thinking about an app where we had special objects that were external to the database.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
that would work too.
All right. Makes sense. I haven't had to use it. Some people seemed very excited about it, Luke included, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, it's mainly if I'm doing business logic rather than array lookup. So this is stuff after I've got the objects out of the array, out of the database.
Mm-hmm.
So I've already done my query, and now those are in JSON field, a JSON column in the database, and now I'm iterating over them. So that's when I tend to hit them. It's always more efficient to do it before you get it, as you're getting it out of the database, as Chuck said.
Yeah. So
the next one is another one which I don't see the use for because I just don't have any private methods in my code. I don't believe in you can now call self.private method. I'm a very public man and I like my methods public. Or that used to be the case until I discovered that instead of reading API code or API documentation or guides, I could just use ls in the pry shell and learn all of my interfaces by inspecting objects. So now I am grateful for private methods because they don't tend to appear when you expect the classes. And that vastly cleans up discovering how your classes work through the pry shell.
I'm sorry. So run this by me again. If you run self dot,
so
I am a private method.
If you called a private method using self.private_method, so you've declared a private method in your class, you can call it as a normal method. So you can just say private method, and now you can call it. But what you couldn't do before is to call it using self.private method for some reason.
Because it was a private method.
Yeah, because then it puts you in the position of being an external object calling.
Yeah, you're calling it the way you call a public method.
Yep.
Yeah. So even if you called the instance of our self is still gonna throw an error exception.
So now it checks the context instead of checking the call method. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying exactly that.
All right.
Yeah, I have not run into that. I suppose that would bug me if I had.
That wouldn't bug me. I'd be telling myself that I was doing it wrong. Oh yeah, this is a private method. I shouldn't be calling it self.private method.
I feel like all the metaprogramming things that I can think of, I'd be calling send anyway. So
yeah.
I would completely skip by this problem. So I'm not sure how I would encounter this, but
I mean, I can kind of see people thinking, okay, I'm calling it against myself, so I'm going to call self dot for this private method. But I mean, the principles of programming and the ideas behind what a private method is, you should understand that you wouldn't assume that you can call it, in a way that you would call any method for an external, interface. So, but I'm quibbling over something that honestly probably won't affect me.
Yeah. As we're starting to get down into the smaller features here, are there some other ones that we feel like we should talk about?
Well, the one that I really hate is the change to calling proc.new and proc will throw a warning in 2.7 if it's called a method. And this is something that's done in a lot of very widely used gems. And But presumably, since it's a warning in 2.7, all of these will now error in 3.
I'm sorry, run that by me again. So if you call proc,
if you call
lowercase
proc.new
uh-huh,
in a method where you haven't explicitly declared a block, it will throw a warning.
Okay.
So if you haven't done your ampersand block, presumably.
I get what you're saying. So the implicit ampersand block that we always used to have is gone. Is that what we're saying?
That's exactly what we're saying. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. That's my reading of it.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's going to catch a bunch of things.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go look at that and just see what the ins and outs of that are.
But the fact that it's warned should make it a little easier to clean up.
Yeah.
The other really weird thing before moving to the amazing Ruby 2.8 and, of course, all the wonderful features in Ruby 2.9 is the compiled binary. So there's a big improvement in the performance on the compiled binaries. And this is something which I did know you could do because I was asked to obfuscate some code on a job a few years ago. And you can compile your Ruby programs so that other people can't easily see what you're doing using the Ruby VM. And I think a lot of people don't know this. I think, in fact, I've seen some very substantial companies ship code that they probably should be shipping as a binary rather than just a plain text Ruby file.
I mean, there was always mruby, but yeah. I knew about mruby. I didn't know that you could compile directly.
So, John, if you could take us through all the Ruby 2.8 and 2.9 features.
Yeah, the fact that Ruby 2.8 is 3.0 now. Yeah. I remember that article that I was talking about. That talked about all those scary things, saying something about 2.8. Scary things with the whatever it was, keyword argument stuff. Anyway, so what about 3?
Yeah, just to say why there's no Ruby 2.8, because if you go looking for Ruby 2.8, you will find it on Google.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because there's loads of development done under that tag.
Huh.
And it was only in August of 2020 when Matt said enough's enough in kind of Linus Torvald style, we're going to have a new major version.
Nice.
Presumably because he felt he'd met his target of the Ruby 3x3 that we talked about at the start of this episode.
Makes sense. Cool. Well, I think we should probably just do another episode talk about Ruby 3 because we are an hour in now.
Right.
And I think there's plenty more to go into, and I don't want to rush it. We do have a guest next week, so I will schedule it for the week after. And then, we can just dive in. So, folks, look for it in 2 weeks, the Ruby 3.0. But yeah, interesting stuff. Reminds me a little bit of Jim Weirich going from Rake 0.9 to Rake 10.0, which was one of my favorite things. So, yeah.
Deal.
All right. So, yeah, there you have it. Talking through if you're on Ruby 2.6, that's kind of what you're looking at. Ruby 2.7 in prep for moving to 3.0. And we'll dive into Ruby 3 in 2 weeks. Hey, folks, if you love this podcast and would like to support the show, or if you wish you could listen without the sponsorship messages, then you're in luck. We're setting up new premium podcast feeds where you can get all of the episodes released after Christmas 2020 without the ads. Signing up will help us pay for editing and production, and you can go sign up at devchat.tv/premium. Let's go ahead and do some picks. And thank you, Luke, for pulling together all of this list.
You can now take all the blame for all the things we've got wrong.
I don't know about that. I will take some of the blame for that because I'm sure some of it was my fault. John, do you have some picks?
I have a little bit more, or not something you can buy on Amazon picks this week, as I have been doing baby things all week. I don't want to tell you what product to purchase. I'm just going to tell you some cool stuff. So the first thing that I want to definitely pick is having somebody freaking help you was the best thing ever. Even the second time around. So I'm having our grandma here taking care, or my son's grandma here taking care of my son. Totally saved our butts multiple times during this COVID epidemic. So, you can't just basically the issue is that the hospital wouldn't let me come and go as I pleased. So I couldn't both, kind of take care of my son, which maybe I could kind of get away with because he couldn't come in and I could come in, with all these restrictions and everything. So I had to have help, and that really limited us So having somebody here totally took a lot of the logistics trouble out of having a kid. Not that all of you out there are having kids, but for the 5 of you that are, there you go. And then the other thing that I definitely got not too recently is, so I have a water bottle that I like always keep by my desk, and stuff, and I like drink out of it. That's just what I do. And then I was just like, I wonder if it's like a Swell bottle. That's like the brand or whatever. And I was like, I wonder, because they like keep your stuff cold for like 2 days. Like I still have ice after, 36 hours kind of thing. So I was like, I wonder if they have a bigger thing. And they totally did. They had this, I'm showing it to everybody on the podcast. They had this gigantic freaking, like 64-ounce thing or whatever.
It looks like a gourd.
It pretty much. Yeah, it wasn't like a pretty pattern or anything, but they had it. And I just put ice water in it. And so now I'm drinking plenty of water because I don't have to like go downstairs to refill my water bottle every hour. I can just refill my water bottle from my gourd here. So
John tried to fit the baby in there and it worked.
Baby's a little bit bigger, but not much. So anyway, those are my 2 picks. I'll actually find a link for that second one.
Good deal. How about you, Luke? What are your picks?
I've got an anti-pick, which I think you might agree with, Chuck. So it's reinstalling everything this week, and I upgraded to Big Sur or Big Sur on the Mac, and I hate it. And I'll tell you what I hate is the enormous window furniture, the size of the what do you call it? The title bar of the windows.
The chrome
is enormous. And I can't find a way to reduce it. I've tried a few things, none of them work. I'm considering rotating my screen 90 degrees and learning to type sideways. It's that bad.
I agree. I've been putting it off as well, waiting for all of you to try it first.
Story of your life, right?
Pretty much.
I mean, it's been rock solid. Everything works after the upgrade. Everything you care about is fine on Big Sur, and operating systems ain't easy. So kudos to the team at Apple making it totally seamless. I know the big stuff like SIP came in Catalina, but essentially flawless for me for a dev machine. My other pick this week is my coding music, which is Hard Times by Paramore, surely a topical song, on a 1-hour loop, which you can find on YouTube. And I just listen to that non-stop while coding. So there we go. That's my pick. Hard Times by Paramore. Great album, great song.
Nice. All right, I've got a couple of picks. So I've been having some pain in my wrist lately. And so I went to the doctor and talked to them. I've had issues before with repetitive stress injury or carpal tunnel syndrome. I get looks from people when I say carpal tunnel syndrome. I get looks from different people when I say repetitive stress injury because people talk about it differently. But when I ran into that issue, essentially my problem is I'd have like my pinky finger and my ring finger go numb on my hands, right? And so this was not it. So I'd have 2 fingers go numb. And then with this, instead, it was just this pain in my wrist. And it was mostly centered kind of at the very base of my thumb, like on my wrist at the base of my thumb. And so my problem was that it hurt, right? So I'd reach down and I helped my wife up off the couch and I'm like, oh yeah, that hurts. Or I'd be up here working and I'd pick something up off the desk and I'd, turn my wrist to pick it up and oh yeah, that hurts, right? I pick up my 5-year-old and she weighs 10 zillion pounds and it hurt. So, it's like, well, crap, what do I do? And so I went to Walgreens and I picked up a $20 wrist brace. And boy, this thing has been real nice to have. And it solved a lot of my issues. So I'm going to see if I can find a link to it either on Amazon or Walgreens or whatever. I went to Walgreens.com and I am not seeing it. I just went into the store, honestly, and I got it. It's not the Walgreens brand one. It's a different one. And it's got kind of this X pattern on the back in blue. And it's just got some straps on it. And then it's got a metal thing on the front. and it just keeps your wrist from bending too much. And it's alleviated a lot of the pain. I did go to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed me like a low-grade steroid, and that's supposed to help it just recover. It turns out it's tendonitis. So, I use my hands a lot. And anyway, so that's kind of the deal there. Another thing I did is I got the Logitech keyboard that Dave recommended last week, the ergonomic one. And one thing I don't think he mentioned that has come in really handy for me is it's got these, what they call easy buttons on them. And so essentially what it has 3 Bluetooth receivers in it. And since I'm sitting here and I've got one computer for work for my full-time job, and I've got another computer that I do all of the podcast stuff on, right? Because I don't want to mix them. So I've got my personal machine. I set up my personal machine kind of in front of me, and then I have my work machine in front of me as well. I have it paired with both computers. And so since I'm pair programming, when I'm navigating, sometimes I can switch over to the other computer and just, answer messages or something that come in from my wife on my personal machine. And so that's really nice to be able to do that while I'm pair programming, right? And so, pair programming over Teams. So I'm liking that. And then I got this Anker, ANKER. It's a vertical mouse. So if you take the regular mouse and you tip it on its side, that's been really comfortable. It is not comfortable to use with the wrist brace on, but without the wrist brace, it fits really nicely into my hand, and I don't have to twist my arm in order to use it. And so that's kind of what I've been using for some of that stuff. If you're running into any of that, if you're running into wrist pain, that's what I would recommend. If you are experiencing any numbness at all in your hands, you need to go see a doctor, because it is the repetitive stress carpal tunnel type thing. And they will give you certain kinds of exercises. I've had this before and it solved it. I just did exercises and I solved it. I didn't have to have surgery. If it's bad enough or it won't go away, you have to have surgery, but I didn't. But they can walk you through how to take care of that. And sooner rather than later is a good plan. So anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there. But yeah, if you're having pain in your wrist, in any of your fingers, then it's a good idea to go in, because they do have medication that can help you get over it. And then just immobilizing it for a couple of weeks with a wrist brace. So yeah, anyway, probably have to talk a little bit about ergonomics at some point, but I am not an expert. I just kind of figure this stuff out by talking to people who know more than I do. So those are my picks. Awesome. And then I'll also just mention the Dev Heroes Accelerator if you're looking to be a dev influencer and take your career kind of the next level that way. And yeah, that's all I got. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks. That was really cool. We'll do a part 2 here in a couple weeks. And until next time, folks, max out.
Take care.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com to learn more.